is maybe two, 3 times when it's at an angle, right? And at the same time, if you're using a heavier flower, let's say like a branch or something like that, that angle will help keep it from twisting, right? Because there's a resistance because of that flat edge, right? But it's always a fresh cut, no question about that. And some of my staff do use a cutter. I really don't like it, to be fully honest. You're not as fast if you're not using a knife, and your cutters have to be super sharp, right? Because otherwise you're pinching that end of that stem, and if you're pinching it, the flower's going to have to work that much harder to get that water up, right? So you're really, all those things help the flower to be successful and you to be able to enjoy it that much longer, right? So that's what it's all about, for sure. So I'm going to repeat a little bit of this purple, which is carnation. And so this is an expensive carnation. So there's a patent on this color. There's a patent on this particular grower that grow a variety of these really saturated colored carnations. And I love them. There are patents on flowers, right? So like, for example, the Dutch flower market, right? And the Dutch flower growers, very smart, very, very smart business people, very smart agricultural people. So even like, for example, the Ostromeria that may be grown in South Africa, right? The Dutch own the rhizome of those Ostromeria. So the grower doesn't own that, right? They grow it and cut it, and then Holland has really become a center point. So many flowers that are grown throughout the world all come to Holland and then get shipped out, right? Because in some ways it becomes more efficient, right? And they can be stronger with their logistics. But those Ostromeria, or the royalties are owned and are sold and are managed. So this carnation grower is the same thing, where they have the patent on this color, and don't fool around with it. And folks are oftentimes a little bit critical about carnations. We'll have even folks will call and say, "Oh, I'd love a flower arrangement. Don't use a carnation. Don't use a carnation." Well, first off, carnations last so well, right? And I'm not making a triangular arrangement here, right? I'm using it much the same way as I'm using this trichdianthus or a leaf or a moss. I'm using it as a foundation to hide my mechanics, B, to give me a little bit of a color story. But it also is allowing me to know that this flower arrangement is going to be enjoyed 1 to 2 weeks, because we all know carnations last a long time. And especially when you're cutting a flower short like I am here, the flower's not having to work very hard to bring the moisture up to the bloom, right? So, it doesn't have to work as hard. If it doesn't have to work as hard, it's going to live longer, right? So there's a win-win on it, for sure. Doing a little bit of a sweep of this color through here. So I'm taking that purple from the center of that artichoke, Johnny, and bringing it across. Some of the seed pods from the date palm. So I'm just going to just let this play, right? And extend my line and give it a sense of a little bit more organic line here, and extend the visual line of it. But I'm not necessarily making it fuller, right? I'm just drawing my framework out so that it can just continue to be enjoyed. There's no question, right, that certainly the Bloomster's style. We use a lot of organic materials to kind of help create the our framework and create the overall scaling of the arrangements. It's just been something we've done for a very long time. But I think in the end, the customer gets such great visual value with those extensions. when Roberta was trimming the trees this morning, trying to had a little bit of extra time today, and so Antonio brings the branches that he had cut from the tree, and it had this beautiful orange lichen moss on it, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's candy, right? You know? Certainly a flower that's having a comeback in the current design interests that we're seeing is the anthurium. Oh my gosh, so much of the design work that you're seeing is including some of the anthurium, especially in the green. So some nice yarrow, right? Again, flower that's going to last a long time. I'm bringing the yellow down from my kangaroo pot, and I'm bringing it down to the lower space so that my color is being repeated.
Oh my God.
Right, so it looks brightens that up, right? And unfortunately, I'm crazy alert. I use it anyways, and I'm sure someone's probably going to have to get me some Kleenex here in just a minute or two. But you know, there are elements that are going to last a couple weeks, and maybe and maybe even a smidgen longer. Yeah, you know, making sure that you water it. You know, in truth, even if you're willing to water it every day, would be the arrangement would appreciate it. You know, I had to go to a long standing client's house last week to fix an arrangement. It was the Mrs. Birthday, and Mr. wanted to surprise her. So and she didn't know that I was coming to the house, and I came to the house and she said, oh, I was walking around the corner from the hallway, and she said, oh, honey. She said, no, Mrs. Kren. Oh. There's another story that goes along with it. But I'm tempted, but I put a stop. So, and why I bring it up was because I had to make this beautiful arrangement in this crystal vase that is a Waterford crystal vase she's had in the family for years and years, and I would never asked to have it, brought into the store. But it narrows down to a neck that's only about this big, right? And so I said, in truth, I really need you to water that like twice a day. Really? Yeah, because, and so you'll notice, like this guy maybe is a little bit thin, but even in our glass vases that we use in the store, or even in all of our design work that we do for the e-commerce site, none of them have that thin neck, because it's very hard for the consumer to realize that that narrow vase, all of a sudden the flowers drink so much water. I mean, they drink way more water than you even imagine. We have some of the clients that we do weekly flowers for. We go midweek to re-water them. And if they have housekeepers in the house, we ask them to water them when the housekeeper is there. And we'll deliver the flowers to the Ritz on Wednesday, and we go on Friday to water. And in a nice big vase, the water can be down even as much as the full length of my hand. And it's like, wow, that is amazing how much water those flowers drink. But the absorption of water it goes like this, right? So the first days of a flower, it drinks way more water than the latter days. So if you starve it in those first days, then the longevity of the flower isn't there. So it's so critical that it's watered. And I've been doing this for a long time, but I don't know that I realized really how much water the flowers drink until we really have built on this subscription process and taking care of flowers in people's homes. And it's just like, wow, Kren, you really have missed the boat on that for years. You needed to, because even, when our sales staff call customers and make sure flowers, they're happy and everything, they're always telling them, please water. And Aaron and Juan, when they deliver the flowers, they're all, please make sure to water every day. I mean, we're constantly trying to send that message along because it's amazing how much they really do drink. Anyways, pretty arrangement. All right. And the one thing that I will say is I'm a bit of a messy designer, so okay. Let's have some fun with some chocolates. So when we talked about mechanics for that other arrangement, we used nice fresh oasis, right? We threw it in a bucket of water, we let it sink down on its own, right? We did not push it down, we did not, it needs to absorb on its own, right? We didn't pour water over the top of it. And you might say, well, why are those points important? Well, they're important because if you push the oasis down or you pour water on top of it, what can happen is that the center of the block isn't wet, right? It's wet on the perimeter, but the middle is dry. And so when you stem those flowers into that oasis, if that flower ends up ending into that dry spot, the flower will sleep on you, right? So it's super important that you let it soak on its own. And then you'll also notice that the Oasis, which is the brand name, right? It's kind of like Kleenex, has a text on one side of it. That's the top, right? And so I say that because if you're using some softer stem flowers like lavender or delphinium or hyacinth or daffodils, right? It can be very hard to stem that flower into that oasis. But if you prepped your container in such a way that side of the block that has the text on it is to the top, the flowers will stem in easier for you. So just a little note, especially when you're using some of the softer stem flowers. Okay, good. So in this case, I used some little extra curly willow, and I just wove a little bit of curly willow inside my vase, right? So I've just kind of created a little bit of a network of branches within it so that when I start stemming my flowers in, they'll hold and they'll stay where I want them to stay. Otherwise, I'm going to be going like this for a little while until I get enough stems in there. So we'll do a couple of the pretty monstera leaves. These are probably from Hawaii. And these are so fun, because they can just get huge, right? So we did a bat mitzvah in January, no, in May, and it was all about the Beverly Hills Hotel, and so it was kind of fun and posh, and that's what, in fact, these umbrellas were part of that whole presentation because those are the colors of the umbrellas at the Hollywood Hotel. And so we did a whole entry to the ballroom of the big monstera leaves and palm leaves, but we sprayed the whole thing gold. So all the foliage was gold, framing out this doorway because it was called Goldywood, right? And so it was super fun and very effective. And this is a great foliage. This is called Song of India. And I love the variegation, and it lasts really, really well. So I'm just giving myself just some nice lines to kind of begin with this. And then some nice tall ginger. So we get tropical flowers in from Hawaii every Tuesday, and super fortunate to have a great relationship with the company's called Green Valley. And they just do just a beautiful job for us. So appreciate it. And then just a nice short California. Oops, I cut those onions ahead of time. So I want to do some here. So one once you cut your bird of paradise, the bloom will not open up, right? So what you have to do, so you have to kind of get your fingers, your thumbs. Because it won't open up once it's cut off the bush. It won't open up. And then between each one of the florets is a membrane. So that's what I'm pulling away. In this case, this membrane is brown, so this bird of paradise isn't as fresh as. But you have, so it takes a moment or two. Now you can cheat. You can cheat as well, and you can slice the bottom of the bird of paradise, and then that makes it obviously easier to get into. Some folks will take the bird of paradise and they will turn it upside down in a bucket of some lukewarm water and let it be for a little bit before you try to do that. And if the water, I guess, kind of helps. These guys have gotten cold. We had a big. That's a challenge. You can't, obviously, you don't know that when you're buying them. I think they're brown, so I think they got frozen, right? Because the tropical flowers are certainly sensitive to cold, right? And so, even like today, we had a whole box of hydrangeas that came in, and the whole box of, the whole top of the hydrangea was all brown, right? And so, I mean, the logistics of flowers is a challenge, right? Because like those hydrangeas were cut in Ecuador, Colombia, right? And then they were boxed. Well, if they're too wet, because, I mean, obviously, as you can all know, weather is changing everywhere, right? And so, Colombia and Ecuador has been challenged with a lot more rain at times of the year than they're used to. So if there's water on those petals and they're boxed, then once we get the flower, they have black spots all over them, right? So that they have to be air dried and that kind of thing to try to help get them before they get boxed. Because once they're boxed, many of the flowers that get shipped to us are transported at something above freezing. 33, 34, 35 degrees, something in that area. The whole intention is that you slow the metabolism down of the flowers when they're being transported, and then you finally then bring the temperature back up again once it gets to the wholesaler or the retailer. So then that way, the consumer gets a chance to enjoy these flowers for as long as possible. But that whole, think about an airplane sitting at the tarmac in Florida or in Dallas or in Miami, wherever that is, working on trying to make sure that the temperature of those boxes stay the same throughout that whole transport process is difficult, right? And thus, that's when we see at times that, there's been some inconsistency in what all has gone on. So I'm going to cheat for a second and I'm going to pull these tortilla over since this is my bird of paradise. So these are white king protea, right? Kind of expensive, but they're super cool. And so I'm going to use these guys to give me a little bit of a focal point down low in this arrangement here. And so then, like I used the Galix leaves in that one arrangement, I would save these leaves of the king protea. These work the exact same way, right? And even once these guys dry, they're actually quite pretty in regards to a dried arrangement. So there are a lot of stuff that you can enjoy both as a fresh flower and as a dried flower. And even making a nice statement for me right away, right? Once this flower has died, it doesn't go in the garbage, right? Because now I'll go ahead and peel all these petals off, and now I have a really cool pod, a peplum in the bottom of that, right? So much like, for example, when you take a pine cone and you spin the top of a pine cone off, and then you can see that the pine cone almost looks like a flower, right? It's the exact same thing. And so we might have used this, I might have sprayed it copper if we were going to use it in the fall, or let it stay brown and use it as detailing in an orchid arrangement or something like that. But so many of these flowers have secondary uses if you just kind of put your little creative head to it and think about it. So they're great, and especially since it is an expensive flower, being able to use it in a different way kind of helps justify that investment, right? So here's some beautiful flax leaves, right? That's been spun up on the top of these. But don't ask me how they did that. Because they come that way. These tropical bouquets that we get, there's some talented folks that help make that happen. When we were in Hawaii a number of years ago, we were at I don't know. I can't remember exactly where we were. But there was a gentleman sitting there, weaving, the hats with the big palm leaves, right? And so people were buying the hats. And I said, no, I'll buy a hat, but I want to sit here and I want to make the hat with you, right? And he was super kind. There wasn't a whole bunch of people there at that point, so he had the bandwidth to be able to do that. But it was fun to see that weaving of that and all that artistry, right? It's so valuable, and it's such a treat to see that, and seeing that folks continue to hold to that artistry and don't let it die. Forward stems in my arrangement here, but I'm just going to kind of folded these tea leaves over just to kind of help my mechanics a little bit. So this is called hanging amaranthus. And as summer progresses, that's when we can get these beautiful long extensions on it. In the winter, they're super, super short. It comes in two colors, in this green and kind of in a raspberry red. But it has such a beautiful, sensibility to it as it falls. Now, for me, I always put it towards the bottom of my container and not up high, because we've learned that if we put it up high and let it fall up here, most consumers think that it's sleepy, right? And so they don't understand it. No, that's the way that flower is supposed to be, right? So, see how pretty that just kind of falls and gives me a great extension. And this all kind of helps visually allow us to connect this arrangement to our container. I never want, even like when we use the date palms falling off, right? Or in some of the other arrangements, making sure that the arrangement and the container, the two of them are playing with each other, right? And they're visually connecting and not feeling like the container isn't relating to the arrangement is super important. And also, for example, the team, we always create our arrangements 360, unless the client has specified otherwise. They're always all-sided, because you never know where they're going to go, right? It's terrible if someone gets an arrangement, puts it on the coffee table and says, no, sit on that sofa, not this one. Thank you. We like, when it's really stressful, that's when I gotta goof around. Because I gotta get the team going, right? So one of our staff members who now runs a very successful event company, she was getting married on Sunday, a Memorial Day weekend, right? And I, in my opinion, we were behind schedule, right? So that Saturday morning, I walked into a store, good morning, Bloomsters, And at least for the next 2-3 hours, I just kept, beating that drum, right? Because it's like everybody was super stressed, and it's like, oh my God, we're gonna get it all done. It has to be done, and because it was for a staff member, it needed to be perfect, right? It needed to be perfect, and so just come on, you guys. And so we have fun. We have fun for sure. People will come and say, "Oh, I'd love to volunteer to work at the store." I say, no, nobody volunteers because this is work. Touch a couple more of these shorter ginger down low in the red so that I can repeat this. I guess I was channeling my inner Robin Williams. We watched that Mrs. Doubtfire the other day.
Oh, yeah.
That flyby fruiting. Oh my gosh, that's a line that I'll never forget. So these Phalaenopsis orchids, these come from Gilroy, from a great orchid grower there that we love. But I had really was an honor. Congressman Panetta came into the store on Wednesday, and we had set up an appointment to chat with me, and yes, we try hard here, no doubt, but we're not important. And but it was interesting, and I shared it because I guess he wanted to talk a little bit about how the tariffs are affecting the flower industry, and the labor force, how that this whole current situation is affecting, and it is, right? And so then I said to him, the orchid, these Phalaenopsis orchids, right? They're grown in Taiwan and the Philippines, right? And then they're shipped to the United States. But they're shipped just as a plant and some roots. That's it. So there's no moss, there's no dirt, there's no nothing. It can't be because it cannot transfer any insects, right? So California is very good and very strict about all that. I mean, even like, for example, shipping iris that are grown in California to Florida is a huge challenge because there's this itty bitty little snail, right? And so Florida's being careful, right? And so you gotta respect these rules because it has long-term impacts if it's not adhered to, right? So, but these little plants, they leave Singapore or the Philippines, and they come here, and then they know exactly. I think it's like 6 or 8 weeks later, that plant is ready to be put on the retail market, right? So they know exactly how long it takes for that spike to be set and the bloom for a single 1 or 2 blooms to be open and then ready to be sold, right? But with the tariffs, right? So then now those plants are now 15-20% more expensive, right? So it all follows down the path. And this orchid grower does such a great job. But we'll see some changes as well there. A couple of these. What's that? This could be a little bit expensive. I'm not gonna buy that. I think we're there. Good job. All right. Have a little bit of fun. So I was thinking the other day. about, this arrangement kind of really be all about greens and foliages. And I was thinking the other day, when I was in Denmark and we would visit my aunt and uncle or my cousins, we'd oftentimes take, little walks in the forest and that kind of thing. And so as we're walking, I would grab a leaf or two, and I would grab a fun mossy stick, and I would grab, some beautiful grasses. And then when we got back to the house, you'd make a little arrangement of all these fresh cut greens, right? Maybe it's in a little mason jar, maybe it's in a jam jar, or a coffee can. And it just, nature speaks to us. You just have to listen. And so I thought it was always kind of fun to just, the simplicity of just some beautiful foliages and just let them kind of, share their story. So I thought, I think this is kind of a fun little container as well. We used to use this at the Four Seasons in Palo Alto, but they changed, where we do our flowers, so I can't do it there anymore. And if you think I know what I'm doing, I really don't. because I just kind of thought of this morning. And so one of the staff was kind enough to weave this for me. Gathered a little collection of some fun material to consider to use, and then give it a good college try. So these are called China berries, and I love the that fun little cascade. Just a little bit of whimsy, In the end, it's probably like a bad hair day, but. Darnell and I went to Vegas on Sunday and Monday to buy in. And, it's interesting when you go to Vegas and when you go to the airport and you see all these different people. They're all different kind of folks, right? And so I was saying to Darnell, I said, I don't really understand this whole concept of a man bun, I don't understand that. And then Darnell says to me, well, don't worry, Kren. That won't be anything you'll ever have to worry about. I said, gee, thanks. I guess that's going to be on my tombstone. Oh, I don't understand. So some fun lucky bamboo, right? A little twisted. So on these guys, you never can cut the roots off, right? Because if you cut it, because it's the wrong size, it'll die. Right, so just FYI. Sometimes the benefit of a narrow container is it actually does kind of limit you as to what you can use, and how many stems you can put in. I heard somebody saying, well, boy, that arrangement had a lot of stems in it, and that is really that's really, really true. You need to know when to say when, right? When is enough? When do you have enough, materials in there? And it's always a challenge of mine, and it's always on my New Year's resolution, is to constantly work on editing myself. Because when is enough? When is there enough detail? There's no question that I love a complicated arrangement. I love, I love it when, whether it's a dinner guest at a wedding, or an arrangement that gets received for the house. I love it when the arrangement gives small surprises as you visually dig into the arrangement, you know, and so thus that's where that detail comes in, right? And but you got to know when you're going to say enough is enough. And I may have already reached that point. I'm still going to give it a good try. So these are hyacinth stakes that I'm using here, right? And chopsticks are great too. Whenever we have a little Japanese restaurant down the street called Seito, they're super yum. But and like I said, I really didn't have a plan for. So I'm sorry it's taking a minute or two longer than. So I love succulents. Their longevity is out of this world. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just simply going to cut the succulent off the soil, right? And then I'm just going to take an 18 gauge wire. I'm just going to put a couple 18 gauge wire at the bottom of this. So this succulent will last 1 month, 2 months. You know, some of the bottom petals will turn yellow, and you'll just peel them away. But you'll still end up having the center of that succulent weeks, months in the future, right? Once you're done with that arrangement, just simply take the succulent and lay it on top of like a little bed of sand or something. Don't water it, leave it be. And then it'll go ahead and set you a new set of roots into the bottom of that, and then you can go ahead and plant it. That's the preferred way to get the succulent to be able to root for you and to be able to plant it. You can sometimes just lay it on top of the ground, and in some cases it'll go ahead and do its thing. I can't promise it always will, but so as a general rule, I like the other. But you know, if I've enjoyed this arrangement for a couple months, there's a good chance that it already has set some of the roots off the bottom of that, and it's basically ready to go. So we'll use some of these succulents in our orchid presentations and just have great fun with them. The visual strength that the succulent gives me in the arrangement. It helps hide my mechanics. It's really just a great win-win. A chopstick would have worked just fine for that too. We didn't get the money. And I said, you know, if someone promises you that they can get peonies for you, you know, and again, I'm saying this is a few years ago, we might have been able to have done it today, but then either A, I didn't have the resources to be able to have found it, but I don't think it was there, because we've been doing this for a long time. But oh my goodness gracious, she was so upset with me. It was just like beyond. It's like, wow, okay. Like I said, I spent the next half hour trying to dance that whole thing through. But, ooh, that was a hard one. So we're just going to put in a few pretty little snapdragons. These are called apple blossom, so they have that soft little shading in that. I'm sorry, I didn't share with you the mechanics that I did here. So in this case, I took some chicken wire, right? So there's a whole movement in the flower industry to try and move the thought process of using Oasis like it did in the first arrangement. There's a whole trend that is trying to move the design industry away from the use of the Oasis, because the Oasis is not, the old style of Oasis is not biodegradable. It has to get just put into the rubbish. There are some newer Oasis, which is the major brand, is working very hard, and I understand that they have come up with a block that is somewhat biodegradable, or maybe fully biodegradable. I'm not 100%. But they had come out with another product last year, and it was called Rock. I think it was called Rock. And I never understood it, because the minute you lifted the block up, all the water came out of the block. How is that supposed to work? But anyways, I don't know that it was successful for them, but that was enough for me to not try. So I used some chicken wire. So, I mean, if you go back in techniques of previous days, chicken wire would be something that you would have that folks used. So I kind of used two layers of chicken wire. So I put a little ball, an open ball of chicken wire down low, and then I put another just kind of small layer of chicken wire up above. And I apologize I didn't show that to you. And the reason why I did a lower level, so that way when I stem my flower in, and if I caught that bottom chicken wire, my stem didn't flip on me, right? This base is fairly narrow, so maybe that wasn't necessary, but I just, in the end, I decided that I wanted to be safe. So that way, right, I don't have any tape, I don't have any tape on the top of my base. Because as you'll see, this container that I prepped for the sunflowers I'm going to do for you, I used some floral tape, right? So I just gridded that. And that's what we do for most of our bases in the store. We just do a quick grid of the waterproof tape on top of the container. The glue, the stickiness of that tape isn't difficult to get off when the arrangement is all done, and it holds super nicely. The benefit there is that the tape has some forgiveness, right? So if a stem is pushing against that tape, the tape's not going to cut into that stem. Versus the chicken wire, it might, right? So you're kind of you're playing with what I want to do there. So I love when I do the arrangement with the sunflowers, we want to do some lemons in there. But I love these wild raspberries, and how fun is that? And so if you think about like a beautiful if you're going to the museums in Europe and you see all the watercolors, and it has the pulled open pomegranates, it has the pulled open persimmons and all, you love that, right? And so when I see these fun raspberries, I say, okay, that's there it is. That's that watercolor that I'm loving. And this particular variety, it's not embedded in thorns on that stem. So it's like, oh, thank you very much. So I was taking my walk in the neighborhood, and a couple houses down, they have an arbor in their front yard, and it has huge raspberries on the top of it, and I never noticed that. It's like, okay, let's see. I might just be knocking on their door and saying, hey, can I have a few raspberries? Super fun. But as we have some branches of figs in the cooler right now. We'll have some branches of persimmons, the green persimmons coming shortly. All that is just, and it's super fun to the eye, right? And again, when you talk about little surprises, you know, as you're enjoying an arrangement, I think all these things kind of make, you know, give the unexpected to the arrangement for sure. I stepped on my tapes. Antonio, can you please bring me a roll of green corsage tape? Or green corsage tape. So I love this. These are some tea leaves, but they're the red tea leaf, right? So I'm just going to quickly fold these over because I want to clean up my mechanics at the bottom of this container here. This is pretty cool. I just needed a little bit of that richness at the bottom of this. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I need a little bit of that richness on the bottom of my container for my mechanics. It's always something that we work on with all the staff all the time. You cannot let the consumer or the guest be able to see how it was created. It needs to have a finished look. One of my staff who helped us for so many years, and we miss her terribly, works for a beautiful paper company. And Elizabeth always says that when she does her presentations, she always talks about hydromechanics. All right. So ready. So we used to, when we had the Art and Wine Festival at the lake, we used to give out like 3,500 to 5,000 stems of sunflowers, on those Sundays. And it was just a great way to say thank you to the community for their amazing support that they've given us over all these years. But I guess the cost to do the Art and Wine Festival is too high for the insurance. So some beautiful sunflowers. And even with the sunflowers, right? Once the flowers are all finished, right? Don't be shy about taking the petals off, right? And now you have this beautiful chocolate, peplum that you can use in another way. Let that dry and spray it with copper or a burgundy spray or a burgundy stain spray or something like that. And there's a great way to be able to enjoy them on a fall wreath or in a great pumpkin or something like that. We just left a few of the leaves on the top of the sunflowers, right? And then some bells of Ireland. These are so fun. There's a nice whimsical sense to it. So here, this vase doesn't hold water. So then I just put another vase inside of it. Hopefully when I'm done, you won't be able to see it. And so we talked about the variegated Pittosporum earlier, right? just it's just a great foliage you can enjoy. When I lived in Denmark, I would go and help my aunt and uncle in the garden before winter set. There they don't have. At that point, they didn't have wooden fences. They have hedges for their fencing, right? And so, hedges all got to be trimmed, before snow set. But we'd always leave, a couple bushes in the yard that weren't trimmed, because then we could go ahead and take those barren branches, bring them inside the house, put them in the window, and the warmth of the winter sun and the warmth of the house, all of a sudden, those branches would begin to foliate, right? And and there where the the sun comes up at 9 and goes down at 3. I mean, nighttime is long. And so having that foliage, open up for you in those windowsills was always so fun. It just kind of, if nothing else, it just kind of gave you a little bit something to look forward to. Because, that was cold. I cheated. I came home during January. Many of the other students went south in Europe and traveled, but I wanted to come home, spend Christmas at home, and be with my family. So also a yarrow. This is called. Can't be yarrow. That's correct. Let's kind of run wild a little bit on this.
There's a flower that has they're like yellow globes. They're just a stick of, what is that?
It's also yarrow.
It's a yarrow too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So this
that's
is
a yarrow.
yeah. So this is called Crispida globosa. Right. I love the name. Right. Also crazy allergic to it.
Yeah.
It gives a lot of pollen.
Yeah, it does.
It gives a lot of pollen, but it lasts. Here, it would be nice to repeat the brown on my face. Clean up a little bit of my mechanics. So when I add some lemons to this. So then, here during the summer, you're having a little summer gathering, and maybe you want to do a little bit of a theme, a lemon theme. So if you're going to use a clear vase, right, and you're just going to slice a whole bunch of lemons, then you can take a Ziploc garbage, the Ziploc bag, right? And so depending upon the sizing, you can try to begin to kind of set your lemons sliced against the glass, right? And then put your Ziploc bag, and then begin to pour water on the inside of the bag, and then set your lemons or your oranges or whatever on the outside. So the pressure from the water will keep those sliced lemons where you want them, or the sliced oranges or grapefruit or something like that. And then the acidity from that won't go into the water where your flowers are. It wouldn't hurt the flowers much, but it just ends up keeping it a little bit neater, right? So I was thinking about making that arrangement for you, but I didn't bring that container. But nonetheless, we're gonna cut some of these guys. I had some grapefruit or something to put in.
What is the stick you're using? Excuse me?
Yes.
What is that stick you're using?
So this stick is called the hyacinth stake. So it's dyed and produced for our industry. They come in a couple different sizes. But it could have just been a piece of a curly willow. It could have been a chopstick. It could have been, anything like that you might have had at home, or you even could have just done some marshmallow skewers or something like that, right? And got the same look for you there.
How well will those cut lemons hold up? I mean, what will it look like in a day, in a week?
They'll be plenty good for a number of days. The whole one's better than these guys here.
Yeah.
If you're wanting to keep them a little bit longer, if you took a little bit of Vaseline or a little bit of olive oil and just did a little bit of that over the, kind of give it a seal, right? Like for example, we did an event the other day, and the caterer was going to say, "Well, kind of, you afraid of the are you afraid of the bees?" And I said no, and because we had done exactly that, right? We had kind of sealed that backside of that the cut open side of the fruit, so that it didn't allow that sugar to be sensed, right? And even like, I'm not using them today, but kumquats and that kind of thing. So we'll throw a whole bunch of kumquats in a vase and enjoy that, as a mechanics to hold your flowers, right? Because the kumquats will end up floating, right? And then in that regard, you almost have an armature right there from the kumquats, and then stem through the kumquats, and then eventually some of those will end up going down towards the lower portion of the vase, and it'll last. If you're going to do something like that, putting a few extra drops of bleach in that water is a great idea, because it'll help keep it clearer. So the size of this arrangement, I really could have used some big grapefruit or something, but nonetheless, it gives it a fun look. We have Cancer Care Point at the last weekend of August at Nestledown, and we've been super fortunate to be able to support Cancer Care Point for many years. It's quite an amazing event they do, right? If I'm not mistaken, I think they earned over $1 million last year on the live and silent auction. So it really gives back to the community in a tremendous way, right? So they're not shedding, but soon enough, a matter of a few days, right? So we can't use it for corporate, we can't use it for anything like that. And when we've done it for for a wedding or something like that, we have to spray with the cheapest hairspray, and then that takes care of it. And that same concept, or else using, the cheapest hairspray works perfectly for this. If you're using like cattails and that kind of thing, use a spray adhesive on the cattail itself, and then it won't burst on you, right? And then you can, we had cattails up on our wall, way up high in our hallway, and we had it for years. Just doing this is just total neutrals. These orchid plants have passed their prime for us to be able to sell them as a plant. sure that it's an import, but I bet it's an import from Holland, would be my guess. You know, as a shop in California and in the Bay Area, we're just extremely lucky to have the great sourcing of materials. I mean, the gentleman that worked for us for 13, 14 years and has a flower shop in Palm Springs, and we had dinner with him on Sunday night, and we just talked about how much harder it is to run a flower shop in other parts of California and or other parts of the country, because everything is having to be shipped in. So you're really having to plan. You can't wing it, and we wing it a lot here. But we have just great vendors that support us in incredible ways and help us be successful for sure. Inside of this is just filled with seeds, and as it dries in the garden, it'll go ahead and drop its seeds in that spot in the garden, and you'll have it again next year. We have the hairdressers next door. Okay, one last one. Yep. and I've done my list. So, I don't know what this is either. I asked for the answer, I didn't get it. It's just a great strong visual texture. Pardon me?
Google Lens.
Yeah, yes, right. Oh, yeah. Oh, I guess I could have done that. Just some great eucalyptus, right, with the orange and the heavy pods on this. It doesn't take much when you have something like that, right? Just some nice orange gladiolas just to give me some quick color and some quick height. I wasn't sure if this vase held water, so I filled it up with water yesterday. We were lucky, because sometimes, the glazed vases, you would think that they hold water, and they don't, and they sweat. And that's exactly what happened with us last week. We did an arrangement. I don't know if the container ended up having a hairline crack in it or what, but it leaked on the client's counter, and then the water spilled onto a brand new leather stool. It was not one of our better days. It's like, shoot. I think that we're lucky. I think there was a protectant or sealant on the stool, and I can't see a mark on it, but it's going to be up to the customer to decide if they want something done about it or not. It's part of
Go ahead.
It's part of what we do.
Yeah.
So fun chocolate artichoke. So there's no way in heck that I'm going to get this in the vase. So I'm going to go ahead and cheat. Visual texture that it creates, is so strong. And then this is some viburnum berries. Love the color of that foliage.
Is that artichoke a variety that's purple?
It is.
It is.
It is.
It doesn't dry that way.
It turned pretty black once it's all finished, but we can get it a chunk of the year. We'll use a lot of it at Thanksgiving and in the fall because it just kind of gives that whole sensibility, right? Doing a beautiful archway for a wedding or something like that, and your arms are all sweaty from the sun, and then you get that on your arms, it's like, oh my gosh, just like very irritating. But it's just kind of like candy, the way it gives a great visual texture. Orange and always. This table is leaning forward a little bit. The whole thing isn't going to touch on me. Birthday party that we have, the 98th birthday party on Sunday. The theme is the Golf Country Club. So we did a whole ball of white button mums for the entry table, so it looks like a big golf ball. Pretty fun. I have no idea what we're doing. So, you know, they're really, it's scary, but it's also, you know, it's an honor to be empowered that way, right? And just be able to, you know, just go for it and do, and just take care of it. And you take, you know, they celebrate her father every year on his birthday with a gathering of his favorite, of his best friends. And I think that's really, really cool. So we've done a number of themes for his birthday, and this year it's just all about the country. Okay, fantastic. Any questions? Any thoughts? Anything that I can help you guys out with? Well, thank you for joining us. These guys, they're called cone flower. It's a hydrangea. They are a hydrangea. Yeah. There are several different varieties. This is a cone. This is called a cone flower.
Do they grow in this area?
Yes, they do.
You can. Really? Can you get one? And does it get morning sun or afternoon? Morning sun or afternoon? Morning sun and afternoon. Yeah. All fun. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
I don't. But I have one now.
This is so great, isn't it?